The Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, will also be contenders this year. And a lot of that, too, will be based on the fact that what is BTJ going to do here in year number 3?
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
May be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Huge, massive step back in nearly every route run statistically, whether you're talking about reception perception metrics, whether you're talking about counting stats, everything in regards to BTJ's 2025 was a little bit of a disaster, man. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you think we might see from BTJ in 2026.
I think you're being kind by saying a little bit of a disaster. I think this was one of the most mystifying developments in wide receiver world last season, is the way I opened up the profile here.
Sure.
Brian Thomas Jr. had 1,282 yards and 10 touchdowns in his rookie season, charted out with a really strong overall profile in reception perception.
Yeah.
And man, anybody could see last year that he was obviously struggling mightily with drops. He had 707 yards in 14 games last year in the regular season. It was a crazy drop. And that was with Liam Cohen coming in, who everybody was excited about. He was like my favorite play designer and offensive coordinator in the 2024 season. And I think Liam Cohen was a massive hit for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then still we get this fall off from Brian Thomas Jr. So there's a lot to get into here with BTJ. And let me start off by saying that I think from a fantasy perspective, I think the bigger concern for BTJ is almost exclusively about his role with the team and role in the offense. I do kind of think you can almost throw out a lot of what we saw on film last year from BTJ, which was not good. It was not good, but it was also kind of just not atrocious. We'll unpack it here obviously a little bit, but I do think we can say that he was really banged up throughout the course of last season. As I mentioned at the top, with all of these, guys in their second seasons, Brian Thomas Jr. dealt with a ton of injuries last year. He came in with a wrist injury that they talked about. He was clearly dealing with a shoulder injury throughout the course of the year. He had an ankle injury at one point of the season. So I do think that's part of it. He was banged up. He was most likely just banged up throughout the course of his second season. And that probably impacted a lot of the drop that we're going to discuss here from a reception perception standpoint. The key will be uncovering, can he get back to 2024 form? Can he actually get better from 2024 form? Because that profile wasn't perfect. And then accordingly, what will his role look like within the context of the current receiver room?
Yeah, you talk about some of the routes individually here, and part of the reason why I was so excited about BTJ and Liam Cohen's offense was that in 2024, he ran a great dig route, man. 78% success rate on dig routes in 2024. I thought that was going to mesh perfectly and fit perfectly into what Liam Cohen would design as a play designer here. And yet it was a massive drop off in 2025. Again, 78% success rate on dig routes in 2024, fell 15 points to 63% in 2025. And by the way, this is not a small sample size here. That was his most run route in 2024 at nearly 19%. So we had a lot of evidence, Matt, that this guy can go out there and just dominate the intermediate and deep parts of the field. And in particular, that in-breaking route, I thought was going to be a huge, massive hit in this offense, and it just wasn't.
So did I. I thought it would be as well, based on what we saw in that rookie year profile. I would say that if you break down Brian Thomas Jr.'s struggles, there are the loud ways in which he struggled, that is very obvious to everybody, and then there are the quieter ways in which he struggled. Yes, correct. The loud way is obviously the drops, and that's backed up in his charting profile. 11.7% of his sample targets he dropped. He caught just 53% of his contested catch attempts on a 25% contested target rate. As a rookie, He dropped just 1.4% of his sample targets with a 75% contested catch rate. You go back to his prospect profile, 2.9% drop rate, 73% contested catch rate with a lower contested target rate in both the rookie and prospect profiles. So, was this a fluke? Right? Like, I think we can say that. Like, sometimes this shit happens when it comes to drops and like you get it gets in your head, it becomes a part of it, you start thinking about it, and it just starts to like be a waterfall effect. I think that was certainly the case here with not just BTJ. You can say it for a couple of these guys that played in their second seasons last year, but he was definitely I would say, like, from a drops perspective, probably the worst offender. It was just all throughout the course of the season. It was littered over the course of his second season film. So that was like the loud way in which he struggled. The quieter ways, I would say, that he struggled, and something that you were alluding to there, they were actually ways that kind of what I would say, and I wrote in his rookie year profile, were like small concerns or areas where he needed to get better. And that was beating zone coverage and working over the middle of the field. Because if you go back and look at his rookie year profile, 77% success rate versus zone coverage. It's a 38th percentile mark. And his success rate on slant routes was a 74% success rate, which is below the NFL average. Well, sure enough, like, not only did those things not get better, they were massive, I think, season-ruining issues for BTJ last year. His success rate versus zone coverage is 69.8%. Yikes. Yeah, you listen, you go through the RP database, you're not going to find a lot of dudes that are like consistent, established quality starters with that low success rate, like sub 70%. Yikes. Unless they got significantly better throughout the course. Like, there are guys that were lower and then got better, and that's our hope here with BTJ, is that in 2026 and beyond he's better. Even 77% would be a huge win, getting back to that. But that was a huge issue. Not to mention, you talk about the dig routes. Just all of these in-breaking routes were a big problem for him. You see it on the route tree, 71.4% success rate on slants. And then it continued to like the dig route, which was a 63% success rate, really bad. That to me was the biggest problem for him, and why almost like as the year went on, they didn't obviously never benched Brian Thomas Jr. or anything, but like they essentially just kind of cut his role back more and more. Then they had to go, once Travis Hunter got hurt, when he was just kind of getting ramped up as that primary in-breaking route player. Yeah, he gets hurt. They have to go out and trade for Jacoby Myers, who immediately like settles down the entire offense, basically beating zone coverage and running routes over the middle of the field, which he's made a long career for himself in the NFL doing exactly that.
Yeah. And again, that addition of Jacoby Myers, I thought, helped elevate the offense a lot. And we're talking about Jacoby Myers, for goodness sake, which I think is so interesting. By the way, speaking of, Liam Cohen said that Parker Washington is expanding his role, learning the entire route tree this offseason. Some folks had noted that he played, quote unquote, primarily out of the slot last year. I just wanted to kind of clarify these statements here. I know that he is widely considered to be primarily a slot receiver. That being said, per Next Gen Stats, he played 44% of his snaps in the slot, 56% lined up outside last year, and he averaged a very impressive 16 yards per reception while lined up outside. So I just, like, you know, again, I'm just trying to add a little bit of context. I agree with the general assessment that Parker Washington should primarily play in the slot, but last year they actually did have him play a little bit more outside than you would think. But that being said, to your point, Matt, I think they just kind of sort of had BTJ stop running in breakers at the end of the year. Maybe I'm wrong here. And again, I'm not watching him on a route by route basis, but it certainly seemed that way. It certainly seemed like BTJ was not running these in breakers as the season was coming to a close, especially after they traded for Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Myers, they traded for him, in week 10, I believe he arrived and then obviously that was a big part of when Parker Washington got unlocked as well. Yeah. Parker Washington from week 10 on averaged 3.1 yards per route run when lined up out wide.
Wow.
Like he was by the way, Jacoby Myers 1.77, BTJ 1.29. He was a really, really effective big play receiver. He's targeted on 24% of his routes when lined up out wide. You mentioned the yards per reception in that stretch. That was 19.5 yards per reception.
Wow.
And that's something that Liam Cohen is really, really good at, is crafting and creating these explosive play opportunities for the interior receiver when there's somebody like this. Again, this was part of like that little ramp up period for Travis Hunter when he was right before he got hurt. He was making these big plays from the slot receiver position, from that F receiver spot. So yeah, I mean, absolutely a guy that can make those plays. Parker Washington, when lined up outside, inside, he showed himself to be that guy. I'm really excited to chart out his profile. Like, he's not going away. I talked to Trevor Lawrence about Parker Washington, and like he doubled back on, I was like, give me just a scouting report on all your receivers. He doubled back on Parker Washington, was like, but this guy has earned his opportunities. Like, he's earned a chance to, he's like, as much as I want to unlock more of BTJ, Jacoby Myers is awesome. And I want Travis Hunter to be a wide receiver. He's like, but also Parker Washington has earned his opportunities, and like, he's good. So, based on what I've seen so far, I believe in Parker Washington to some degree. I think he's a really, really good player and a very strong route runner. So I do think that this kind of pushed Brian Thomas Jr. into a role that you mentioned, like the in-breakers sort of, I do think like they kind of just stopped throwing him the ball there. Not totally, but they kind of stopped making him the primary read on some of those plays. And like I mentioned, I think the role is the bigger problem for BTJ. Like I honestly, we'll come back to this at the end. I do like believe he can be a better player in isolation than he was last year. I would be shocked, honestly, if we get, unless like this stuff's in his head and like it just, for whatever reason, I don't know. But I'm pretty confident we can get a better player than what we got in isolation from BTJ in 2025. The question is just like, what role is he going to play for this team? Because the role last year for Brian Thomas Jr. was pretty much just like X only. To kind of outline that, Thomas in 2024 as a rookie, he took 56% of his sampled snaps on the line of scrimmage, 73% of his sampled snaps outside. He was frequently like a Z receiver. He was given a lot of layup targets. Gabe Davis, when he was healthy for the 2024 Jags, was basically the sacrificial X receiver. This past year, year one in Liam Cohen's offense, Thomas 78% sample snaps outside, 79.9% on the ball. Wow. And that was pretty consistent like throughout the course of the season. That wasn't like, oh God, we got to like shove him into this. No, that was pretty much, and he did reportedly have a pretty rough training camp. Right. Like it was not apparently not good. He struggled with drops, and maybe these injuries were starting early and they're like, oh yeah, we got to put him into this role, whatever. I don't know. But yeah, he was pretty much an on-ball player from the beginning of his rookie season to the end of it. And that also impacted his route tree, not just on some of the digs and stuff like that, but Thomas ran a 9 route on 13% of his routes as a rookie. That jumped to 22% this past year, which again, you also saw screens. Like, remember when Liam Cohen at the NFL scouting combine, when he was first talking about Brian Thomas Jr., and this is like a little bit of my theory that maybe they watched the rookie film and they were like, oh man, and they kind of overloaded him a little bit. I do think maybe that happened to him. But remember, he was talking about like, I didn't realize he could run all these routes. I didn't realize how good he was going to be in a screen game. Brian Thomas Jr., 6.5% route percentage on screens as a rookie. He had one screen in his chart, 0.4% of his routes last year.
That's wild.
As a result, he was in space as a rookie on 55% of his catches. He was in space on 21% in 2025. Like,
Matt, I mean, again, a guy who is struggling with drops, a guy who is clearly going through it mentally, wouldn't you try to design layup targets for this guy? I mean, the immense upside that if this guy can get right mentally, if this guy can start to really put it together, we're talking about a player that could be special in the NFL. Listen, no disrespect to Parker Washington, no disrespect to Jacoby Myers, but those guys are just high quality players. They, to me, don't have the ceiling to be special players. BTJ does have that ceiling. If he is going through it mentally, like we saw him go through it, wouldn't it make more sense to get this guy some easy layup looks?
Yeah, I think so, but at the same time, like they tried to do that not with the screens and stuff like that, and that was also part of it too. Like we also have to remember that they said that about Brian Thomas Jr. before they drafted Travis Hunter, and like that was kind of what they were doing with Hunter was a little bit honestly, I think a little bit too much like gadgety, screeny stuff with him
right
at the beginning of his rookie season. So there was that. I think they just struggled kind of figuring all these pieces out before they added Myers and got kind of the offense on schedule. Like it wasn't great, like the start to the Jacksonville Jaguars season. Things really, it felt very messy and very disorganized on offense, which is tough for a guy like Liam Cohen, who's very, very intense and it really thinks highly and should think highly of his scheme and his system, because when it works, man, it really works and it's awesome, as we saw in the back half of the year. I think
to that point, Matt, do you remember the sideline exchanges between Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence? I mean,
yeah, when it was like hitting his chest, like put it in his chest,
put it in his chest.
yeah.
That guy's hardcore, man.
He's hardcore. Also, when that was kind of he said that was a relationship like he had with Baker Mayfield too, like very combative and intense. And obviously, I think Baker's a more, just based on what I have seen from these guys, like more of an intense person than Trevor Lawrence necessarily. Really interesting there. But yeah, I mean, my suspicion, honestly, and this kind of goes to my point of like why I do kind of wonder if the entire season is very injury tainted. I don't think like Liam Cohen wants to have this kind of, it's not a sacrificial X profile for Brian Thomas Jr. Let's be clear about that. But I don't think he wants to have this kind of like this much of a vertical X only type of player to the point that go back to the 2024 season with Mike Evans, who was definitely an X, right? 85% rate of snaps on the ball, 72% outside, but he only ran a go route on 12% of his charted routes. Remember, Brian Thomas Jr. was 22%.
Yeah, it's wild.
Now wasn't the screen. Mike Evans was not the screen guy in the offense. That X is not usually the screen guy, and I don't think we necessarily need to see like, oh, Brian Thomas Jr. going to have a 6% screen route rate or anything like that. Theoretically, this guy should be like an outside the numbers demon X receiver type. Even in this season where he struggled, and we talked about the success rate versus zone coverage was, horrid. Not to mince words. Yeah, it was horrible. It was not to mince words here. It was horrible. It was a 7th percentile freaking result. Obviously, that's brutal. To be anything below 70% is just absolutely brutal. But he was still 70% success rate versus zone, 73.2% success rate versus press. That's 61st and 70th percentile, respectively. Like he still showed
versus man and
press. Excuse me. Yeah, like that still matters quite a bit. Like when we're looking at this profile, and that's again where it comes back to like, what is he going to be going forward? Is he going to be this like X receiver only type? And we kind of look back on the 2024 season as like, I don't want to call it a fluke, but like a bit of a, from a production standpoint, a little bit of a flash in the pan. For the audio listeners, James' eyes got really big when I said like fluke or what is right there. So I don't know if I freaked out on this one. But like,
yeah, I am freaked out 100%.
I do think there's a couple things to mention here. And I'm saying this as somebody that like I said at the top, I believe that Brian Thomas Jr. can and likely will turn it around.